welcome in our pal Murat right now. Murat joins us on a big day for the Winnipeg Jets. How are you, my man? What's going on?
Hey, so yeah, big day for sure. Um, Basically, it's going to help define, I guess, the next generation of Jets, and in some ways, Kyle Connor news. I think we've talked about it. I don't think we're too shocked about the 12 million AAV or the bonuses built into it, but it's a big day. And Kyle Connor, probably the most striking thing about it was how open he was about just his love of Winnipeg and his talk about wanting to raise a family here. And there's no other group of guys I'd want to compete for a Stanley Cup with. It's a real good vibes day here in Winnipeg.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And there's a bunch of things that we heard from him that stood out, and we can get to a few of them. But I did. We don't talk a lot about ownership and management very often. Obviously, people are always on the GM for a move that they want them to make or that sort of thing. But on a day like this, I think it is important to recognize all the way to the top. Kyle mentioned Mark Chipman, who I'm sure was involved in some of the negotiations with Kevin Cheveldayoff and the representatives of Kyle. But he spoke to the environment that they provide for these players. And let's face it, that's probably a more difficult job here in Winnipeg than anywhere else. And between the culture that they've managed to put together in the locker room, but also what the organization has done really since day one, continuing to provide a first-class environment so that these guys only need to worry about what they do on the ice. I think it is important to note right now because none of this stuff happens, I believe, if they haven't set a very high bar and high standard for the way players are treated the second they get here to Winnipeg as a Jet.
Oh, when teams win Stanley Cups, the players, they thank the owners, right? They're the sort of unheralded and sometimes over-heralded people, depending on the day. But at the end of the day, with a contract negotiation like this, you've got management and their team working with Kyle Connor's representatives towards a deal. At some point, they've got to pull the trigger on actually deciding that this is going to be a key piece of the future, unlocking all of the cash that comes with it, the enormous bonuses. That's a part of it financially. And Mark Chipman was 100% invested in Kyle Connor returning to the Winnipeg Jets. And make no mistake, that's, I think, a huge part of why he is here. You also do hear, to your point, there are Jets who arrive here from other cities and then reflect openly about how, wow, like they actually do things better here in some respects than where we've come from before. This is the only NHL team Kyle Connor's ever known. But when you get guys with the opportunity to compare a little bit, a lot of the talk, especially in the last 2 or 3 seasons, have been about how these guys feel like a family and treat each other like one.
Well, we certainly heard that from Kyle today. As far as the deal goes, it's an 8-year extension. He's basically going to be there for the remainder of his playing career in all likelihood. It ain't cheap. I mean, it's a record-breaking contract, but in the landscape of the rising salary cap and other deals, not including Connor McDavid's, albeit that was a 2-year deal. What do you make of where they ended up landing on between the two sides?
Yeah, I think it's ever so slightly too rich, but the bigger underlying concern is Winnipeg kept their guy. And let's use $12 million. That's the AAV. That puts him in Mitch Marner, Mikko Rantanen territory. Also, 2 deals signed with in this market where we know the cap is going up year over year over year. So it does seem a little bit rich to me because Mitch Marner and Mikko Rantanen I view as superior players to Kyle Connor. Do I think that it makes sense Winnipeg would retain him at that price? 100% I do, because he is a special and sometimes outright spectacular player. He's coming off of 97 points. He's in the top 20 or so, I believe, in terms of goals scored in the last 3 years, in that same type of range for points. This is a special offensive player. He's also just catapulted up to tied for the 6th highest cap hit starting next year, pending what Jack Eichel and others do. So, yeah, a little bit of an extra tax there. And I think the reason why that makes the most sense is that for Winnipeg, $12 million, the opportunity cost to that is different than in other situations. When Steven Stamkos can walk from Tampa Bay, a franchise icon they let go, Tampa Bay can make that move knowing Jake Gensel is on the way. You can go to the UFA market and replace these players. In Vegas, you can give Mitch Marner $12 million and know that he's going to keep an awfully big portion of that with the taxes. Winnipeg paid slightly more than competitively, I think, for Kyle Connor, and they did that because he is their guy, and that is the most important thing at the end of the day.
You know what? I guess I'm a little bit on the other side of this, and it's more because of where the market is and where the market's going to be next summer. Like if I think Kyle Connor left money on the table on this one. Now, whether that was from the Winnipeg Jets or somewhere else, like let's just say Kyle Connor has another 40-plus goal and 95-point season. If he goes to market next year, Murat, you've got a bunch of teams with a lot of money, and a number of them competing with each other. Like if he just said, no matter what, I want to be a free agent next year and has a similar season, I think we're talking about, now, albeit it would be a 7-year deal, and that's, I think, is an important caveat, but I think you're probably starting in between 13 and 14 if there's a number of other teams in the mix, because that's what elite scorers are going to cost from here moving forward.
Yeah, I think that for me, it's about each individual player's situation. Kirill Kaprizov made it clear, I think, that UFA was a distinct possibility, and Minnesota made it clear that he would not, that they would not be outbid for his performance. It really seemed like he was going to get over that 16 and eventually 17 million, or else he would walk. You heard Kyle Connor today talk about 8 years being a goal of his. He wants to be in a secure spot for his family long term, his connection to the city, the community, and all of that. Like, I don't think this was Kyle Connor putting the Jets over a barrel and saying, like, listen, I am definitely going UFA, pay me like I'm going to be a 100-point player again this year. I'm just comparing it, I think, to what other players make. And there's an argument that he could have made more as a pure UFA with 31 teams bidding on him. I don't think that was the number one plan for him. It's just tough for me to stock it up against, like, I don't want to come off too negative on this either. To be clear, I think that Winnipeg paid a luxury tax to keep Kyle Connor, but that it was the right thing for them to do. But I'm not putting him in the Mitch Marner, Mikko Rantanen tier of players. I don't think he has a track record of two-way impact to mirror that, and I think that there are some aging concerns that go along with it as well. So I think the Jets did very well here, and they got the most important thing done. But no, I guess I disagree with the premise that that it was realistic that he was going for 14, 15 or what have you next year.
Listen, I mean, listen, I even think that the Rantanen deal, and we can include the Marner deal if we want, like in a post-Kaprizov signing world, and again, that's not going to be the standard, but I tell you what, every single agent is going to be quoting that one when they're meeting with teams moving forward. So I think in a short period of time, if there are players like this that come to market, and listen, it's up to the teams to try to prevent that, and the Winnipeg Jets have taken care of their business today. I'm not sure that, those real elite stars aren't going to still be getting a premium. And I know people are mentioning, well, it's the same as Mitch Marner. I mean, part of the reason why I think Mitch signed for 12 was a lot of what you get by being in Vegas. And I'm not talking about the weather. I'm talking about keeping more of that check and all of that. And bottom line, the Jets got their deal done. And, we'll have 9 years to talk about cap efficiency and how it's going. But you can count on number 81 being out there for the
Yes, it's cap efficiency from other places, right? To have Connor Hellebuck and Mark Scheifele at 8.5 each right now is tremendous. Josh Morrissey, tremendous. And a lot of these veterans elsewhere on the lineup, they're doing well. And so it doesn't have to have the most cap efficient Kyle Connor contract. What it does need to have is Kyle Connor in the lineup scoring goals, because you're not replacing those on the market.
Knowing that Connor is here and those other guys that you mentioned, with their current deals, What do you think that does to Kevin Cheveldayoff as he looks to give this team the best chance to make some big time noise in the Stanley Cup playoffs? I mean, will this accelerate or increase the aggressiveness, do you think, of the Winnipeg Jets when it comes to potential ads, knowing that there'll be other players that are going to need raises in the future years? Like, I mean, in particular for this season, and maybe we'll say next, Murat, do you think that this is something that maybe makes the Jets bigger players when it comes to players that are available and be willing to maybe lean on and deal some of the picks that they have in the and prospects even with the club?
Well, it's a huge swing from the scenario wherein Connor walks. Like the sea change in what Winnipeg is capable of with that player in the lineup versus a UFA departure is enormous. That is a big swing. But I think Winnipeg's been pretty clear that it's in a win now mode. Kevin Cheveldayoff sometimes bristles at that term. He says every decision I ever make is to try to get the Winnipeg Jets to win. But there's a very clear window here, I think. And as long as Connor Hellebuck is an elite goaltender, as long as Mark Scheifele, also 32 years old, is playing at a high level, Adam Lowry is a key piece of this team. Josh Morrissey's 30 now. Like there's a large number of vital players on the wrong side of 30, as Connor himself will be, not this December, but next. So there's an impetus to win now. What signing Connor does is it proves that that's actually happening. It's not just the plan, but it's what's in motion. And I talked to some Jets about that today, right? When a Josh Morrissey signs a long-term deal, when a Mark Scheifele signs a long-term deal, part of the hope, part of the belief is that, well, Winnipeg's going to do everything it can to win while I'm on this contract. And Morrissey in particular, I had him in a one-on-one, and it was a really open conversation. Well, like, yes, absolutely, this is massive for us because it's not just a plan. It's we have this guy locked up, and I cannot wait to keep feeding one-time passes to him on the power play. There is an enthusiasm that builds.
You just mentioned the other Jets. I mean, what was it like around the rink today? And speaking with the teammates of Kyle Connor.
Yeah, I mean that was cool. It's like I think everybody expected Connor to resign, right? That's been what you and me have been talking about. That's what the insiders have been talking about. We've been assuming it was going this way, but to have it done clearly lifts that room's spirits. The stick taps at center ice was a really special moment. Scott Arniel joked to me in the scrum that his speech was Nikita Chibrikov signed for 2 years and he took a discount so that Kyle Connor could stay. Like they're having a great time. I'm not going to name names, but I talked to some younger players too today, and I just said kind of like, what's it like watching this right now? What's it like seeing where this could all go in a best case scenario as you try to make your own mark? And like, I saw some wide eyes and I was told like, wow, I mean, it takes one day at a time. I'm not anticipating anything like that for me, but to live that dream someday, to see that it's there for somebody, I think that there's a lot of Jets inspired today.
It was funny listening. I believe it was Ken's question about to Kyle. Can you imagine, thinking back to that, kid that was drafted 17th by the Jets in 2015 and imagining this day today. I wasn't thinking about as much. His answer was excellent, but we kind of went through Boston passing on Barzal and Connor 3 times and those 3 picks in a row, and then Barzal going and getting Kyle. And he's always been a quieter player. Like we've thought about Hellebuck and Scheifele and Morrissey. Kyle Connor, despite not saying a lot, has done all his speaking on the ice. And I mean, he's now one of the best offensive players in team history. I mean, he's working on a number of records, and that's 1 decade down and really the majority of another decade to go of Kyle right here in Winnipeg. I mean, if he plays it out and stays healthy, touch wood, I mean, we're going to be talking about a guy that has an incredible amount of games played here in the city of Winnipeg, and will just be another one of these players, like of a star player that is synonymous with this hockey team.
Yeah, I talked to Zach Werenski who's a good bud of Kyle Connor, and they work out sometimes in the offseason. They worked out a whole bunch. And I talked to him after Kyle Connor got engaged, and that was coincidence. The story was just about how great of a goal scorer Kyle Connor was and what insights we could glean about him. And Zach Werenski said to me that I worked out with him like every day for weeks the summer he got engaged. And he just didn't mention it at the rink.
Hmm.
And like, for me, that stuck so much because it speaks to how understated of a person Kyle Connor is. Like, he's not bragging about this or that. He's not like, one thing Josh Morrissey told me today is like, based on the goals he scores, based on the 97 points, Kyle Connor has the ability to be a player who's bragging sometimes, drawing attention to himself sometimes. There are worse players who work harder to put the spotlight on themselves than Kyle Connor does. But the defining element of him has been just to be soft-spoken, say the right things at the key times, and then let his play talk on the ice. And, maybe that's part of why he doesn't get as much acclaim outside of this market. But to talk to you today, to talk to fans and see the online reactions in this market, the acclaim is enormous. And I think that's why it's such a positive story today, is because Winnipeg's seeing its guy get his due.